Hello, everybody, and sorry about the delay today in getting started in this Google Hangout. Michael Bolton. We're we're delighted that Michael has agreed to join us today, and he's just going to follow up on his recent testing masterclass you did in Dublin, where he addressed the topic on how to get what you want from testing. So now we're just going to hand over to Michael, and he's going to tell you a little bit about this presentation. And there was a lot of conversations afterwards, so he'll fill you in on the kind of gist of what he's been asked, and he'll have a bit more feedback for you. So, hello, Michael.
Hi, Dara. How are you?
Great,
Thanks.
great.
Thanks for setting this up. Um, I'm. Oh, look at that. Here's another thing that's happened. Oh, ooh, look. Ah, yes. Oh, there's a live stream there. I'm looking at all the different things that are happening. This is kind of it's just as new for me as it is for you, and it is in every sense a typical Google user experience. Opaque, vaguely pretty, hard to understand, and I can't see anybody else in the group chat, so that makes it a little bit tricky.
There'll be a few more coming in, Michael. They're on the way.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So the object of my talk was to help people understand how they could get what they wanted from testing, both from the perspective of testers and from clients of testers. So a large part of the talk was focused on how to obtain good testing coverage, how to use oracles, how to reframe certain kinds of testing problems. Like, for example, many people seem to believe that their classical problem with testing is the inadequacy or the insufficiency of requirements. But I think it's important to reframe that because there's always requirements. Requirements are there. Requirements are in the air. Requirements are spoken. They are thought. They are felt. And they're sometimes, to some degree, written down. I think what people are complaining about most of the time when they talk about a lack of requirements is a perceived lack of requirements documentation. But one of the things I tried to illustrate is that you don't need an immense amount of requirements documentation in order to do the most important job of testing, certainly one of the most important jobs of testing, which is to find problems that threaten the value of the product and to do so quickly and expeditiously and to make sure they're important problems. Well, there are lots of ways to do that which don't require documentation. It's wonderful to have some level of documentation, but we have to accept as testers the fact that documentation is imperfect, it's incomplete, it's sometimes inconsistent, it's often out of date, it is often confusing or ambiguous. And you can see that as a obstacle for testing if you choose to do so. But if you choose to do so, you can also see it for what I think it is, which is a problem that testing exactly helps to solve. It's our job as testers not only to show that the product conforms to requirements, that's basically wrapped up in something that we call checking. It's also our job to help the development team, the organization, the client, explore the requirements and understand and learn from experimentation with the product where we're at, how we're doing, what else we need to know, what else we might need to develop. So all of those things are wrapped up in this reframe of requirements as being far more than requirements documents and lots of available sources of information. along with the idea that while you might consider it a problem for testing, it's a problem that testing helps to solve. So that was one big theme of the talk that underlay the whole thing, and we talked a lot about oracles, principles or mechanisms by which one would observe and recognize a problem. We talked about coverage, ways to model the extent to which we've tested the product from various perspectives: structure, function, data, platform, interfaces, operations, time. We talked about quality criteria and things that might threaten them. And we talked a little bit about the role of the tester in an Agile environment, which is work that James and I have been doing in the last little while, trying to go deeper on the very popular Agile testing quadrants. So I'm interested to see who has what questions about the thing. And there is a chat window in one of the other interfaces that I've got here. I'm basically right now looking at a great, big, huge video of Dara on a headset, and then a little tiny thing to the right that says group chat, and I don't see anything in it just yet.
Okay, well, on the test huddle page that you'll click through to from the slider,
yeah, I see it.
I've just shared a link with you guys, and you can click on that link and you can join this conversation with myself and Michael.
This looks like it should be a video somehow. Oh, it's me talking a few minutes ago. Okay, I see the members. I see the leave a reply. I see the post comment, but I don't see the comments themselves. Oh! Latest tweets, test title, blog post, friendly tester. No, I don't see any comments pertaining to this. You can type your questions for Michael below and we'll address them during the Hangout. So if you can see him, I can't.
Okay, well, I'm sure they're just going to come in here momentarily.
See if there's... And I write a comment to myself. This is testing. Testing. And what's interesting is, oh, there it is. This, the angle of my screen makes a difference here, Michael. There we go. Oh, that's good. That's me. And michaeldevelopsense.com. There we go. HTTP. www.developsense.com. Post comment. Can I write a comment to myself? I just posted a comment. Oh, look there. Oh, there's Richard Bradshaw testing diligently. And there's a whole bunch of other people. Okay, I can only see a comment after I've entered the comment, I guess. 117. And, oh, that's really cool. The link to the comment is spilling outside of the box for it. Who tested this?
Okay, so I can see there's a few people just testing out the comments field.
Okay,
and
very nice. Okay,
good.
The question is, leave for reply. How do...
If you want to reply, you can hit reply beneath their names, but I guess for the sake of everyone at home, it's best to just read the comments that come in and
here's a test comment. Okay, now what's interesting is I'm not sure because of the time delay. I can't tell whether there is a comment in the backlog or whether I don't know if I can see a comment until the comment has been posted. Let me thank you, Ajay, for posting a test comment.
Yeah. So you can see your comment has come through there, Michael. And if anyone has any questions on any of this stuff Michael has been presenting so far, any questions about the stuff he presented during his masterclass, we'd love to hear them. And
this is interesting.
If you click through the link, you can join this live this live discussion.
This is interesting because I've been told you are posting comments too quickly. Slow down. And interestingly, the It's from WordPress. Or at least the title bar of this window suggested that's what it's from. So,
Okay.
all right. So comment.
There's a
Post.
couple of people just joining in here now, Michael. I can see Richard after joining.
Hello, Richard. How do
Hello.
I see more comments? Oh, Richard. Hello. Are you videoing with us? Hello.
I somehow joined your Hangout, so yeah, people who join the Hangout, you can see me and you can also hear me.
That's right. And here's Gabby.
Hey, Michael.
And here's Buchesa. Buchesa. I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce that. And that person, whoever it is muted besides. Hello, Richard. And now
Thanks
I'm getting
for joining us, guys.
Now I'm getting some echo. So I presume that those who are hanging out would, Gabby, for example, might like to ask a question or make a comment.
Hey, can you hear me?
That would be Gabby. Yes, I can.
Yeah, hey.
And Dara, it appears that Buchesa or Buchesa, I don't know. I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce it. Is muted. Richard, it looks like, has voluntarily muted himself, or maybe not.
I think that they're voluntarily muted.
Okay.
So if you'd like to join in on this conversation, just hit the unmute button on your screen. But if you want to just listen in, that's fine too.
Hey, quick question in the chat. So from all the...
Might want to mute that. There we go. Mute the output. Go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah, I was wondering, from all the topics covered in the masterclass, which generated the most debate?
In the class itself, it was a 3.5-hour class. There wasn't a whole lot of debate that I heard. We didn't have a long question and answer section. I guess one of the biggest deals is that essentially what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to reframe the way people think about testing, about silly metrics, about silly measurements, about the centrality of test cases. I'd imagine all of those topics are controversial. I wasn't directly involved in any debate about it myself afterwards. But I'm interested in terms of the basis of your question. I could put it this way: what would it matter to you? And I'm not asking that in a sort of confrontational way, but at the actual pragmatics of it. How would such a thing help you or hurt you in some way?
Well, I'm curious with all the changes happening in the industry, with Agile, with less and less formal documentation, both on the requirements front end, on the test case documentation front as well. My main interest is how is training basically changing for testers.
How is training changing?
Yeah, especially when I'm thinking of new people coming on in the business and taking up test roles. How do you train these new people these days for this new type of doing software development, basically?
Okay, that's a question I can answer, I think, much more easily.
Okay.
We train testers in the same kind of way that we train doctors. Obviously not with the same level of intensity. The same kind of way that we train pilots. The same kind of way that we train new drivers. The same kind of way that we train anybody going into a discipline. We don't hand them a bunch of written instructions, a bunch of documentation, and then expect that they will be even remotely qualified to perform those things to the level of an expert. The way we train testers in rapid testing, in our way of doing things, is we, first of all, sit with them. We get them to watch us as we test, and we talk about what we're doing as we test. We then sit back and give them something to test. And we observe them doing the testing, and we watch for certain patterns of behavior, certain tactics that they use, certain skills that they bring to the table, and we talk about it. We give them increasingly challenging assignments as they continue to develop skill, and we continue to develop trust in them in exactly the same kinds of ways as driving is learned. So too is testing learned. You don't learn to test by reading documentation. You learn to test by practicing testing. Reading documentation is a minor part of that. And you learn to test, just as you learn to do most things, by obtaining feedback from your practice, from what you're doing. You get feedback from the application. You get feedback from your test lead, your test manager, your test trainer. You get feedback from your clients. You get feedback from the programmers. We get feedback from other stakeholders in the client sphere. So, in terms of training new testers, I would say that we actually train testers instead of handing testers something and hoping that they fulfill some kind of mission without supervision or without further feedback. So, training is an ongoing, personally supervised and personally interactional kind of role, or kind of task, and testers learn to test by testing. You're furrowing your brow, Gabby. You look
No.
not quite satisfied. Oh, okay. You're thinking, processing.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I was just thinking in terms of kind of a corporate setting. The way you're describing training new testers seems to me to be like a full-time job. So if you're like
for a while, it has to be supervised. Sure, absolutely. But first of all, how do we train new managers?
I don't think nobody trains new managers.
Well, that's part of the problem now, isn't it? Right?
Exactly.
One of the most interesting things I ever heard, my mom told me about this years ago. A fellow who was training to be a negotiator, what's the word I'm looking for? An arbitrator, somebody who helps to settle disputes. His training regimen consisted of this. He followed a senior arbitrator, a senior negotiator around for a year. And he didn't say anything. He was instructed not to say anything during the meetings. He was instructed to watch and observe and take notes and listen and to watch what was going on. And after the meeting, he and his senior would have a discussion about it, would have a conversation about it. And this went on for a whole year. Now, I don't think it has to be anything like that in software testing. I don't think it has to be anything like that in management training. Not to that degree. But on the other hand, I do think it has to be a lot like that in terms of the basic approach, which is people learn by being immersed in an environment, by being given increasing amounts of freedom and increasing amounts of responsibility to learn how to optimize the quality of their work. Now, that may sound familiar to you if you're familiar with the synthesized definition of software, of exploratory testing that Kem Kainer came up with in 2006 or so, where he said that exploratory testing is a style of testing that emphasizes the freedom and the responsibility of the individual tester to continually optimize the quality of his or her work by treating test design, test execution, and learning, and test. He also added test-related result interpretation in terms in a way that allows them to continually optimize their work. Those are activities that go on in parallel throughout the project. Well, that's how you learn to test. You learn to test by testing and by getting feedback from the things and the people around you. So at the beginning, that is a pretty intensive job for a test lead or a test manager. But as time goes by, people develop skills, they develop responsibility, they develop trust, and that gets extended, and the personal supervision gets relaxed as those things happen. So it's a full-time job for a while, but it's not a full-time job forever. You know, all you have to do is look at how testers are trained now and see we could do much, much better than this if we gave testers more consistent and more regular feedback. And that's how people learn to do anything.
Well, I think that's an excellent point.
Thanks. I agree with you.
Thanks, Michael. We can see there's a few questions as well over on Test Huddle. Let's just see what's coming in.
Okay.
And there's one question here that says, the topic is how to get what you want from testing. I'd assume we'd need to start with what one can get out of testing. Not sure if testers can give yet an answer on this. Can you comment?
Let's have a look at that myself there. Okay. That's Alt, saying that. Hi, Alt. What can one get out of testing? I can give an answer as to what one can get out of testing. Boy, it's practically limited only by your imagination. Let us think in terms of the information that testers can obtain by experimentation with the product. That's primarily what, it all starts and ends with that. It starts with interacting with the product, configuring, operating, observing, and evaluating the product, and learning about it. That is what we get out of testing. That is the principal product of testing, is learning about the product. Learning about the product that we've got so that our clients can make decisions about whether it's the product they want. We can get out of testing information about problems that threaten the value of the product, potentially unrealized avenues of value in the product where, as we're testing, hey, we just discovered that we can do this interesting thing, this new useful thing with this product in this interesting way. Well, that can provide information and opportunity to the marketing people. We regularly found these kinds of things at Quarterdeck. We would, testers and support people and customers for that matter, would find novel uses for the product, interesting ways of putting it to use, and an alert tester will be connected with customer support and customers in general, and with his or her own use of the product in order to realize different ways that it could be used, that we could obtain value from it. Of course, the big thing is threats to value, problems that get in the way of the user accomplishing some task that is valuable or important to them. Things that threaten value also represent potential opportunities for improving the product. From the process of test design and test execution, we can get more data for testing. We can discover things about the product that nobody realized or understood before. Lots and lots of different opportunities, lots of possibilities there. So, Alt. I hope that answers and addresses your question.
Michael, I have a question.
Oh, Ajay, great.
Yes. So, what are your tips to educate customers, both internal and external, who don't understand the value of testing?
Well, the quick and simple answer is talk with them. There's so many different ways in which people could misunderstand the role or the mission or the value of testing that I'm not sure I can give a pat answer to that one. But it starts ends, I think, with talking with them. What are they looking for, and what kinds of information are they looking for from testing? What might be the limitations on their conception of testing? For example, this is a big one. Many people equate testing with what James Bach and I, and an increasingly large community, mirabile dictu, call checking. Checking is the process of making observations and applying decision rules algorithmically. We set up the product, we provide it with some input, we trigger some behavior in the product whereby it processes that input, and then we observe the output. And all of those things can be done, at least in theory, by a machine. Well, that's okay. That's not, that's okay as far as it goes. It's a good thing to do. It can be quite important to do that sort of thing. A big theme of the talk that I gave in Dublin, it's important for us to think of Harry Collins. Harry Collins is a sociologist of science, and he's been very influential on James and on me, and some other people too, happily, in the last couple of years. At the Eurostar conference in 2013, Harry was slated to give a talk. Alas, he was unable to do so due to illness. His colleague, Rob Evans, stepped in and gave a wonderful presentation in his own right, based on Harry's abstract. And Harry's abstract, I'm going to read it to you, read like this. Computers and their software are two things. As collections of interacting cogs, they must be checked to make sure that there are no missing teeth and the wheels spin together nicely. Machines are also, though, social prostheses, fitting into social life where a human once fit. It is a characteristic of medical prostheses, like replacement hearts, that they do not do exactly the same job as the thing they replace. The surrounding body compensates. Contemporary computers, he goes on, cannot do just the same thing as humans do because they do not fit into society as humans do. So the surrounding society must compensate for the way the computer fails to reproduce what it replaces. This means that a complex judgment is needed to test whether software fits well enough for the surrounding humans to happily repair the differences between humans and machines. This is much more than a matter of deciding whether the cogs spin right. You know, that's from a guy, by the way, who, so far as I know, has never been involved in software testing up until at least the time that he started testing his imitation games, basically implementations of the Turing test in various different kinds of contexts, in which the purpose of the imitation game is to see if a non-expert can fool someone else into believing that they're an expert. So it's a sort of extension or variant on the Turing test. Now, Harry and his colleagues developed a version of this, and so I know that at that point they were involved in software testing. But think of the wisdom of that, considering all the people who've been in testing for all these years, including me, who were never able to explain or describe that point so succinctly and so elegantly. He was aware of our work, but he didn't get any particularly large amount of coaching from us. It was pretty cool because Harry's work framed our discussion of testing and checking, and his description of his talk reflected that. Okay, so why is that such a big deal? It's because software is ubiquitous, and its intention is to fulfill many, many, many human purposes. It is replacing humans in many situations. It is extending or enhancing or accelerating or intensifying or enabling the capability of humans in other ways. And so part of what we have to do when we're testing is to make sure that the outputs come out right. That's nice and that's okay. But I could tell you about my experience this morning trying to figure out what's going on with Google Hangout. And I could tell you that it's pretty opaque on the face of it. So one of the things I would have to do as a tester of Google Hangout is to determine whether I'm okay with the confusion and the difficulty of dealing with the interface, or if I would want to make improvements to the product, or if I would suggest as a tester make improvements to the product so that other people don't have to go through what I went through. So there is an incoming phone call which I will cheerfully ignore. Oh well. That's my fax machine griping at me in the background. I can't turn that off. So there's a great example right there of technology interrupting us and doing things where we could bark at a human, hey, shut up. But we can't do that with machinery. Well, you know what? Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay that we can't do that machinery. Maybe we're able to tolerate the imposition and the interruption. But observe what just happened. Any human who is in the room, my daughter, for example, 10 years old, would be able to look at me and without any verbal communication whatsoever know that I'm on the phone and know that it's important and know that she shouldn't be making noise that would interrupt me or that it would interrupt the conversation. But my machinery doesn't do that. I have to repair the deficiencies of the machinery, the social unawareness of the machinery, and decide, well, am I willing to tolerate that? Am I willing to put up with that for the benefits that the machinery operates? And that's exactly the sort of thing that testing reveals. And that checking, I might add, does not. That when we simply operate the product to make sure that a certain set of inputs produces a certain set of outputs, I would argue that tells us nothing about the social context in which we're trying to place software. And that is something that skilled software testers bring to the table. That's why I think that as testers we have to become more like anthropologists, more like sociologists, why we have to be more like historians, we have to be more like social scientists. And that's a line of thinking that was introduced to me by Kim Kainer in 2006, and that I think is becoming more and more widely accepted. That, hey, there's lots of stuff that we can delegate to machinery, and there's lots of stuff that we can't. So, Ajay, does that address your question?
Yes, I take away the one-line talk to them.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Chat with them. Find out what they want. Find out what they want to know about their product, what they want to learn about their product. I see another question from Srinivas. What if the manager is not a hands-on testing manager? How to tell about the effects of defects not accepted by the developers? Well, you know, it's our task to interpret and to understand the possible consequences, to understand the risk, the possible impact that a problem will have on people, and to describe that in terms that matter to people. As a programmer, it's important to remember that you are very different from your client. We even as testers, even as people involved in technology, we're all very different from our clients. We have to recognize what David Platt points out in his book, Why Software Sucks, and his 3 YouTube talks on that. You should look him up. David S. Platt, P-L-A-T-T. Look him up on YouTube. I believe he's got at least 3 talks up there. David S. Platt on why software sucks. He makes the point that we who are interested in technology are not like our users in many ways, and we need to remember that. We need to remember that your user is not you, as he says. Your user is not you. His first, last, and only law of software development, he calls it. Your user is not you. So when a client is wondering about the implications of something, what we need to do as testers is we need to articulate why a problem matters to people who are going to use the product. And to the degree that we can articulate that well, and by the way, there's a tool that we use for that, and that tool is oracles. You can read about that in a series of blog posts that I wrote called Problems with Problems. If you just do a Google search on that, Problems with Problems, and the site /developsense.com, and read forward the next few articles, or next few blog posts, what you'll see is a development of how we need to think about oracles, problems that, things that alert us to the presence of a problem. What I haven't done yet, and what I've done in some talks, I have yet to do this in blog form, is to talk about how we need to take those oracles and use them as ways to transmit our feelings about risk, our feelings about a problem, into a rational explanation of an observable inconsistency, or with something we want, or a consistency with something we don't want, and use those oracles as ways of framing the conversation so that our clients, test manager, product owner, project manager, developers, can understand how these problems matter to people. That's a skill that we need to develop as testers. So we use oracles for that. What we have to get good at as well, Srinivas, is telling the testing story. The 3-part testing story. The story about the product, what it is, what it does, how it works, how it doesn't work, how it might not work, in ways that matter to our clients. We also need to be able to articulate how we've tested the product, what we did to configure and operate and observe and evaluate it, but perhaps even more importantly, what we have not yet done, what we've not yet tested, what we haven't yet looked at, the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, things that we don't even know to look for. We have to learn how to move that into the direction of the known unknowns. And finally, we also have to tell a story about the quality of our testing. Why the testing that we performed was worthwhile, why it was important, why it was good, why the testing that we haven't performed yet or didn't perform yet or won't perform at all isn't so important unless our clients raise an objection, and the things that got in our way and slowed things down, things that made testing harder or slower. Those are important aspects to the testing story, and I think that actually relates back to Ajay's question a little bit. If our clients are having a problem recognizing the value of testing or recognizing what they want from testing, perhaps it's because we have not yet quite articulated some part of that 3-part testing story. Story about the product, the story about how we did the testing, and the story about the quality of the testing, why the testing was any good, and what got in its way or slowed it down. Other questions? Other questions? Common mistakes the QAs of an organization commit when the organization transits to Agile way of working, and if possible, how to correct those mistakes. That's from Mariam. And I would say, well, one of the...
I'm here.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
Oh, great. Oh, okay. Let's have a look there, because I'm reading your question. I don't see you. Your camera's off or something. But I hear you.
Yeah, just to improve the voice quality, I switched off the camera. Hi.
I see. Okay. Hello, how are you?
Good,
Nice to
and
see
you? Same here.
Good. All right. What's the principal mistake? Well, one principal mistake is thinking about testing in terms of quality assurance. Testing isn't quality assurance. We
No,
don't
it's
assure quality.
yeah, it's specifically related to testing now, and then
Right,
overall,
okay.
when they expect to do testing, but have the output should be of like quality assurance.
Yeah, well, it's a bromide. That is to say, it's a slogan, something that to me is so obvious that it doesn't bear repeating. But there's this bromide that says, on an Agile team, everybody is responsible for quality. Well, yes, that's true, but it's not just true of Agile teams, it's true of every team. We're all responsible for the quality of our work. What's interesting, though, is that as a tester, I can't assure the quality of my work, of the product, I mean. I can assure the quality of my own work. I misspoke. I can assure the quality of my own work, but I can't assure the quality of the product because I don't have control over it. I don't have control over the schedule, the budget, hiring and firing authority, scope of the product, contractual obligations that we might have with customers, responsibility of the market. I don't have control over any of that stuff. So what do I have control over? I have control over the quality of my work, and I use my work to help the people who do have that authority, who are responsible for that, who are responsible for the quality of the product, who do have control over the source code, who do have control over the management of the project. I can do that. I can help those people, and I do that by shining light on the product. Now, can I point out 5 common mistakes the QAs of an organization commit? Well, the first one I would say is calling yourself QA. Let's drop that. Let's proudly, happily call ourselves testers who help the people who actually assure quality. So that's one. A second big mistake, it seems to me, is confusing testing with checking. I addressed that a little bit earlier in this discussion, and I addressed it in the talk in Dublin. Another big mistake, it seems to me, is obsession over regression checking. The idea that the biggest problem, then, the only problem, the most important problem that we have to deal with is the possibility of regression problems. And don't get me wrong, a regression problem is a problem, but there are lots of other problems possibly too. And so if we over-focus ourselves on regression checking, it seems to me that we will perforce reduce our capacity to defocus away from that and refocus on other things that might be problematic. So I see lots of organizations where the testers are saying, but we have to rerun all our regression tests after each build or during each iteration. Well, that's nuts. It's like saying that we have to give every university student a grade 3 spelling class or a grade 3 spelling test every time we take that university student and move them forward into another course. It's ridiculous. Instead, I think what we might want to do is we might want to run a spelling checker on the university student's work, but more importantly, we want to read the university student's work critically and evaluate it in terms of seeing, well, do they actually get it? Are they learning what they need to learn? Are they developing what they need to learn? I think we should treat our products exactly the same way, which is to do some checks for basic sanity and for critical functional problems, but not to forget that the real mission of testing is to learn about the product, to discover things about the product that nobody ever knew before, that nobody thought to check, that nobody imagined would be important, or that nobody realized would be critical or useful. Let's see. So I've got those are 3 huge ones. Let's see if there are any others. Another is the idea that Agile testing or that rapid testing means no documentation. Well, that's silly. A test script is a form of documentation. We believe in documentation, but we believe in as little documentation as is possible, as feasible, in order to completely fulfill the mission of testing. I was going to say that the equation of testing and test cases and testing is a big Agile problem. It's a problem all over the world. Testing is not test cases, folks. I don't know of any other complex cognitive domain in which people frame the work in terms of cases, step-by-step instructions, specific, explicit things that procedures that must be followed in an excessively formal way. The closest thing I can think of in that sense is the checklisting that pilots and doctors do when there's something crucially important that they might forget. Well, yes, those things are important, and Atul Gawande in his book, The Checklist Manifesto, talks about how important those things are. But following checklists is not piloting. Following checklists is not doctoring. It's not the work of doctors to follow checklists. It's the work of doctors to be skilled investigators. It's not the work of pilots to follow checklists. It's the work of pilots to respond to constantly changing conditions, to volatile and risky circumstances. Testers, I think, are the same kind of way. So that's another common mistake that I see in Agile, the idea of equating testing with test cases. Test cases are, at best, an adjunct to a much more complex and much more sophisticated kind of domain. If you can encode it in a test case, you can probably automate it. So go ahead, do that. Not a bad idea, but let's not make the mistake of using that as our entire strategy for understanding the product, because it's not a way of understanding the product, it's a way of checking the product for certain anticipated problems. It's our job to investigate the product instead. So I don't know how many that is, whether that's 4, that's 5, or that's 8, but I hope it addresses your question there.
Yeah, it exactly addresses the problems I've been experiencing for a while now. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of stuff on my blog about that, and I'd be delighted to point you to some of that stuff. I don't know how I can do that at the same time as I'm trying to yammer on here.
Yeah, if you see the chat window on the left corner of the Google Hangout window.
Yeah, I do see that, and I can try to do that. But you know what? If you do a Google search that looks like this, here's what the Google search should look like: site:/developsense.com, and you should see a bunch of related posts.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
A whole bunch of other questions there on Test Huddle for you, Michael.
All right, well, let's have a look. Here we go. I've now figured out how to revive it. Just revive the page, but without the comment tag. There we go. Try refreshing the page. There we go. Why software sucks. David Ed Platt. Oh, thank you, Dara. Very good. WhySoftwareSucks.com. What if developers don't want to become better testers? Well, that's okay. That's all right. I'm not insisting that every tester or developer become a better tester, just as I would insist that every developer become a better tester. Have I got this right? It's early here, folks. It's still before 10 o'clock, and I'm never at my best before, say, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. But I expect neither testers to become developers nor developers to become testers. We have roles, and roles are a good thing. Roles are fine. In the same way that I don't expect that guy, what was his name, Ochoa, at Mexican goalie. He was phenomenal, but he's not terribly useful as a forward, especially when nobody's tending the goal. So roles are okay, roles are fine, roles are a good thing, but let's not make our roles prisons. Let's not make our roles silos, or if they are silos, to the extent that they're silos, let's put big open doors and picture windows and comfortable couches, invite other people inside them. You can come into my silo for a little while, and I can come into yours. They're not designed to insulate. They're designed to help us specialize in useful and important ways. I do programming. I did some programming yesterday. It's sort of kind of fun sometimes for me. It's burdensome for me other times. And I prefer to use my energy and my my passion in terms of investigating the software rather than building it. That's cool. So too do I see it as not a particularly bad problem where a person is interested in building the software. When a developer wants to build software and is not frightfully curious about the way the software works, how it might fail, emergent properties of it, that's fine. I'm happy to help them, and I'm glad that they're programmers, and I'm glad that I'm a tester, and that we can work together. That's great. It's very satisfying to work in that kind of collaboration with people. In the same way, I'm a mandolin player. I love having uilleann pipes. I love having accordions and good guitar players and flute players and fiddlers at my session when I play mandolin in an Irish session. Things are much better when there's diversity and when there's that wonderful unity with friction that comes along when people are doing stuff together, where we take advantage of our differences and take advantage of our skills. So I don't worry about developers who don't want to become better testers. I sort of wish they would. I'd like them to be interested in what I do, and I like them to think critically about the work that they do. But you know what? That's their role. Their role is to build the software. My role is to test it. I'm happy with that. No problem. What other questions do we have here? Richard Bradshaw asks, if I don't have test cases, how can I report what I tested to the business? Well, you know what? How do managers report what they tested or what they did for the business? They write a report. They deliver reports verbally to their superiors and, by the way, to their subordinates. They describe their work. They articulate their work. As a tester, I can tell you what I've done to configure and operate and observe and evaluate the product. I can tell you about areas that I've covered. I can frame those in terms of the structure of the product, the little bits and pieces, the functions of it, what it does, how it does things, the data, that is what gets processed, the inputs, the outputs, interfaces, how stuff gets into and out of the product, platform, the various platforms that I've tested on, the things that the product depends on, operations, how people use the product and how I've modeled my testing in terms of the way people actually use it and the conditions under which they use it, and time, how I've tested the product with relation to time, how time interacts with the product and how the product interacts with time. I can describe my testing in terms of quality criteria, in terms of capability, reliability, usability, security, compatibility, performance, installability, development-oriented quality criteria like supportability, testability, maintainability, portability, localizability, I can describe specific risks that I've tested for. I can describe the factors that have gone into evaluating my project environment, into my context. I can describe the test techniques I've used. Now, at that point, a count of test cases seems pretty pale. And each, if somebody absolutely wants to model their testing in terms of test cases, then I think each test case should touch on several points of the things that I've just described. But it seems to me that would get kind of lengthy. So there are various ways of doing that. We can illustrate our information with, or our testing story with maps, and I mean maps in an extremely general sense, anything that relates anything to anything else. So a written report in a narrative or in hierarchical form, a mind map, sets of tables, diagrams, flows, anything that helps us to facilitate a conversation or that helps us to mediate a conversation in some way. So sketches, diagrams, illustrations. But I'm resistant to thinking of counting things in any terms other than helpful illustration of a much more fundamental kind of story. I have to tell a story about my testing. It's not, for me, in any way satisfying to hand my client a set of data and hope that my client will organize that into the information from which that data is derived, or the information that data is intended to illustrate. I believe that testing is a story that has to be told, not a set of numbers that has to get generated. So if you wanted me, Richard, to emphasize the point, I hope I've done that. I see the word bingo show up here, so I'm hopeful about that. We have a new participant, Jagannath, it looks like. And it looks like Jagannath is muted. And there's Joaquin. I recognize Joaquin. I feel like a little like camera. Look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 participants here. That's good. I thought it was going to be limited to 5. I'm glad that's not.
No, it's a pretty full house.
Okay. So Ajay asks, there's so many testers who want to be certified, are certified, and continue to believe that testing is all about checking. Should we worry about them? Well, that's a tough question. In some senses, I think, well, you know, no, unless they want to get really excellent at their craft. If they want to get really good at testing, then I think absolutely we should engage with them and participate them and help them along. But if somebody is interested only in having some monolithic organization speak for their career and for their work by joining, Lord knows how many it is now, 300,000 other commodities, then okay. But I'm much more interested in engaging with people who are immersed in their work, who are enthusiastic about their work, who are passionate about their work. That's, to me, far more important. And if there are people who aren't like that, well, okay, but they're probably not going to seek me out, and I'm not going to try terribly, terribly hard to engage with them. I don't want to inflict help on them. I think, though, as passionate testers, like you, Ajay, I think we need to talk about our craft, and for those who are interested and who want to engage, then by all means, let's do that. But you know, many people in many domains don't engage very much with their work. I don't have a whole lot of time for those people. I encourage them to join us in creating craft to skill testing and advancing it. But You know, James Bach often says you must be this tall to get on the ride. So you know, you have to bring that to the table. And I encourage people to do that, but I don't want to impose on them or hammer on them. Yeah, encourage, but don't overdo, just as you say. Gabby asks, what books do I recommend to testers? Oh, holy cow. Not very many testing books, first thing. Dara, I'm going to make you get busy here. I'm going to give you a blizzard of titles, and I'm going to get you to transcribe them. And well, in fact, I'll transcribe them, and you can fire up the references there. Here's just one example of a book that I think is very important to testers. Thinking Fast and Slow. It's about how we systematically fool ourselves, and maybe, just maybe, has some helpful ideas on not being fooled. Next, this book by Harry Collins. In fact, Tacit and Collins and The Shape of Actions, also by Harry Collins. Those are two books on the subject of how people learn stuff and how people know stuff, and on the differences between what machines and humans can do. And that's been very important and very influential on our work, James's work and mine, as I said earlier. Another one. What's one of my favorite books lately? Well, actually, I just finished a book called How Not to Be Wrong. How Not to Be Wrong is a book mostly about mathematics and the interesting and extensive ways in which mathematical perspective can be helpful to us and can help us to avoid getting into trouble. Joaquin rightfully points out Perfect Software and Other Illusions About Testing by Jerry Weinberg. A wonderful book not only for testers but for people who are customers or clients of testers. While we're at it, Exploring Requirements, Quality Before Design, another Jerry Weinberg book. In fact, it's not a bad heuristic to say that just about anything written by Jerry Weinberg, the Quality Software Management series, especially the first two volumes, volumes 1 and 2, those are all wonderful books that greatly inform the way we think about testing. Secrets of Consulting, a book on how to give and receive advice more successfully. An Introduction to General Systems Thinking and General Principles of System Design, two books about how to think about systems generally. James is fond of saying that Introduction to General Systems Thinking doesn't mention software testing, except it does in one of the latter stories in the book, in which a very eccentric fellow is talking about how he's tested a community management system. It's a funny story and worth looking at. For books on software testing itself, Lessons Learned in Software Testing, I think, remains, after all this time, it's getting old. It's a dozen years old by now. And yet it still remains an excellent book and a guide to what we think about. But, you know, it really, I think a wonderful thing that you can do as a tester is to go out and read whatever interests you, whatever you find interesting or engaging. There's a book by a fellow named Stephen Johnson that I read a while ago called The Invention of Air, which is a book about Joseph Priestley. And he obviously didn't invent air, but he invented the way we think about air, the way we discuss air, the way we look at air. Well, you know, that doesn't sound like a testing book, but then when you realize that what testing is really about is about exploration of ideas and investigation of them and discovery of new ideas and generating new ideas, then the world's your oyster. You can look at the work of the early scientists, the early field botanists, a book called The Science of Describing by a guy named Brian Ogilvy, if I remember correctly. You can look at Leviathan and the Air Pump by Stephen Chapin and Simon Schaffer. That's a book about how experimentation got started. There's just so many different wonderful things about science, about sociology, about technology, about history. Testing touches on all of these things. Anthropology. Testing is the study of people. Now, hardcore book for testers, a book that I think testers should read, a book called Code by Charles Petzold, which is about the technical aspects of how information is represented inside computers. Brian Merrick's book, Everyday Scripting in Ruby for Teams, Testers, and You, is a wonderful introduction to the Ruby programming language framed in terms of how to use scripting languages in testing work. So, you know, there's just the world's your oyster, as I said. There's so many different books in so many different domains. Most of the books that are specifically oriented towards software testing are, in my experience, pretty crappy. There's just not much to them. They tend to miss a lot of the important stuff, the human stuff, and they tend to focus on pretty narrow functional aspects of testing. But you know what? Read them too. Read them too, because every book that you pick up will have either a germ of an idea that you want to adopt or adapt for your own purposes, or it will have something that you can object to strenuously, and that can help to sharpen your own ways of thinking about things. So read everything. Oh, Explore It. Richard Bradshaw is saying, yes, Explore It is one of those rare good books on software testing. I actually kind of liked James Whitaker's first book, How to Break Software, although it contains in its title a fallacy. We don't break software. It was broken when we got it. Dave Platt's book that I recommended earlier, How Software Sucks. There's so many different things, so many different books, and so many different subjects. Read them all. Go ahead, read anything, and then read something that other people aren't reading and bring it back to testing. Bring what you've learned back to the testing domain. Blog about it. Talk about how it affected your perspectives and your approaches. So, Gabby, that's just a start. If you look in the back of the Rapid Software Testing Appendices, and I'll give you the link here, what you will find is a book or a list of books that we like and that we recommend, and it's way out of date. We haven't updated it for years now, and it's long overdue on our endless list of things to do. How about books or other sources to tackle the question how to train other testers? I would look at Tacit and Explicit Knowledge for that, because Harry's big point is that we learn things by being immersed in a society, and that's the beginning and ending, as far as I am concerned, on how we train testers. We train testers by immersing them in testing. And Richard Bradshaw points out that Heipschotz, I'm one of the few people, non-Dutch people, who can pronounce that properly. I'm proud to say that Heipschotz has a good list of books on his website, and Richard has kindly provided us with the link to that posting, and I agree with Richard. It's a pretty good set of books. Let's see. Is there another? Oh, I go to the other window, and then I press F5. What are the important skills or tools that a skilled tester should have? I'll answer that one fairly quickly. I will say the first thing is to be able to think critically. What that means is to be able to think about your own thinking, how you might be getting fooled, how you might be fooling yourself. Thinking Fast and Slow is a book about that. Another book called Tools of Critical Thinking is a book about that. It's our job, it seems to me, to think critically about software, and that's a skill. Thinking critically is a skill that can be learned and practiced. It's important for us to practice that. Scientific thinking, the design of a good experiment, and the application of critical thinking to the design of experiments and into testing. The skills, huge skill that many testers seem to be, alas, sadly deficient in, the skill of recording and note-taking. The skill of taking good and concise and relevant notes to support the conversations and the further investigations that you engage in with your clients and with the rest of your team. The skills of mathematics, statistics. It's important for us to learn those things, learn about them so as not to be fooled. The skill of writing an articulate test report and delivering an articulate test report, which may not be in writing, which may be delivering that verbally. The skill of test framing. You can look up test framing on my blog, and there's a bunch of posts about that. That is establishing a set of logical connections that structure and inform the activity of testing. So those are the big ones. Those are the big testing skills that I think are important for testers to learn and to process. Jane is asking, in your experience, what do you find is the best test process to follow? I'd have to that contain. It's not a question that I'm particularly fond of, Jane. Let me offer a different way of looking at that. First of all, when people talk about a test process, they're always talking about a test process model. A process is what happens. A process is what goes on. Whenever anybody's talking about a test process, they're talking about a model, a subset, a description of that. So let's first of all reframe that question is, what do you find is the best test process model to follow? And then we have to get around my objection to the notion of the best. Well, as a member of the context-driven community, I don't believe in best practices. There is no best test process model to follow, because who's to say what is best outside of a particular context? And even inside a context, we can't know what is best. We can try what we believe to be good ideas, and we could get feedback from those ideas, and we can learn from the processes that we follow. But we can't make any claims or assertions about what might be best. So but maybe that's not too helpful. Let me try to answer the question in a more helpful way. I believe the best test process to follow is one in which you are engaging with your client and with the other stakeholders in the project continuously, in which conversation rather than documentation is the dominant form of communication, that conversation goes at its best unmediated. So there's nothing in between the parties to the conversation. Sometimes that's not so easy, or sometimes it's not so available, and sometimes documentation can help to facilitate that. But conversation, I think, is central to that. The best test process to follow would be one in which you are continuously learning about the product, in which you are continuously developing your own skills, in which you are continuously developing our understanding of the problem that the product is trying to solve. So there's no recipe for doing that. Those are all good things to do, but there's no recipe and there's no process model that describes that. It's our job, it seems to me, to investigate the product and report on it as quickly and as effectively and as thoroughly and as credibly as possible. So whatever process that you find yourself doing, if it's not doing those things, then continue to tune your process to find something that keeps doing those things better. What other questions? How can new testers be helped inside the organization to improve their testing? Conversation and collaboration is key to that, seems to me. That we've got lots of people in the organization who have different specialties and different skills, and an organization that fosters collaboration and sharing between those people is one in which testers will learn to get better. So I see Alt has taken a crack at answering that question, so it seems. Alt's response at 2:15. Encourage exposed testers to the testing ideas that are out there. Answer from experience. So that's, I think, a wonderful set of answers to go along with that. How are we doing? We got, it's coming on to 10:25. It's 10:27. We got Joaquin, I see you there. Any other questions? Jagannath? Mariam? Richard? You've been so quiet for so long, Richard. You've been noisy in the text format. That's great.
Okay, I have a question.
Ah, good.
So I'm just having a discussion with somebody around test cases. So do you feel, what about out of an Agile context, do you feel test cases are useful? Or what alternatives can you have to follow test cases? Or not?
I like to think
Yeah.
I like to think in terms of test ideas rather than test cases. It seems to me that when most people talk about test cases, and there are lots of different notions of what a test case is out there, most of the time, though, it seems to me that test cases over-focus us. There are conditions that can be checked. Sure, check them. But a test case, it seems to me, drives us to a specific observation of usually following a specific set of activities. And I think most of that is just wasteful from the certainly from the perspective of giving a tester a set of step-by-step instructions to follow and specific outputs to observe. Well, I mean, would we manage a programmer that way? Would we give a programmer programming cases? You know, step 1, click on File. Step 2, click on New. Step 3, you know, type my project dot PRJ into the drop-down menu. I think that's crazy. But for a more complete answer on that, what I would suggest you do is look at the February article, or February issue, rather, of a magazine called Testing Trapeze, produced by a bunch of industrious Kiwis, and look in there for an article called Test Cases Are Not Testing. And there's a subtitle to it, which escapes me at the moment. But Test Cases Are Not Testing, and the article's by James Bach and Aaron Hodder. And I think they do a wonderful job of pointing out that testing work cannot be encoded, and that it is not particularly helpful to try to do so. Checking can be encoded, and if so, then let's delegate that to a machine. Let's get the machine to do the checking work. But the work of a skilled tester cannot be encoded any more than the work of a skilled doctor can be encoded. We don't talk about automated doctoring. We don't talk about automated piloting, except to the degree that humans remain in control of the process. We can see the consequences of what happens when humans become too trusting of automation. That in the piloting business, the worst example of that recently was in the Asiana air crash about a year ago in San Francisco, where the pilots assumed that the automation would be taking care of things, and it wasn't. Humans have to remain in control of the process. So that's important. Ajay, I noticed, has also posted James's presentation against test cases in the Google Hangout chat window. So those are two good resources on that. But I think, to the degree that test cases are useful, let's call them what they are. Let's call them checks. Let's call the process of creating test cases. Let's call those check cases. Let's automate them by all means, and let's let humans, engaged humans, investigate and interact with the product as humans do, and learn from the product's behavior what else we might want to investigate and what else we might want to know, and the problems in the product.
Okay, so if we don't have test cases, how could we keep track of how much testing has been done on various parts of the application?
Coverage maps.
To get,
mind maps. We don't need test cases prescribed in advance. We can talk about things that we've looked at. We can look at this stuff retrospectively. After all, I mean, thinking, again, another model for it, think in terms of explorers. Explorers, Lewis and Clark, Magellan, none of them worked with exploration cases. But they made fantastically wonderful records and descriptions of what they did, what they found, what they discovered. They talked about why they had done it. They talked about the degree to which they had fulfilled their missions. For Jefferson, in the case of Lewis and Clark, for the Kings and the sponsors of the expeditions. We don't need to go prescriptive on this, and if there are important things that we must check, then checklist them. But let's not pretend that test cases describe testing work in any fundamental kind of way. They don't. They essentially narrow us, I think, to a specific set of observations, and when those are important, go ahead. But I would argue that most of the time they represent a waste of time and effort by trying to program humans. That's what happens when people write test cases. They try to write a program for a human to run. And I think that's mischief. And also, it's kind of soul-destroying for the human who's being programmed.
So would you say checklist is a good way then? If we can't automate our checks, then an alternative would be to use a checklist to keep track of what we need to manually check?
Well, we're not. It's not a case of this. This is another thing that bugs me quite a bit. Actually, that goes back to an earlier question. It goes back to Miriam's question of what are the mistakes that Agile organizations make. The distinction between manual and automated testing drives me crazy. We don't talk about manual or automated driving. We talk about using cruise control sometimes when we want a machinery to handle the accelerator. We don't talk about manual or automated management. We don't talk about manual or automated programming. We don't talk about manual or automated qualitative research. We don't talk about manual or automated research. We use tools in all of those things, and they're ubiquitous. So let's not make that distinction. Let's break things down instead, Richard, into things that can be checked and that should be checked, and to things that need to be tested. And basically, you've got a test when you think in terms of what would happen if ... When you think in terms of What does a product do when ... When you think in terms of what problems might there be in ... Well, that is not checkable, right? There are portions of that, fragments of that might be checkable, but those questions are not questions that could be answered with checks. You can, having come up with that idea, having come up with the idea for a check, you can encode it, but by definition, a check is something that can be performed algorithmically. But engaging curiosity, engaging discovery, that's not something that can be done algorithmically.
Yeah, I think that seems to be all the questions that have come through there, Michael. There's been a lot of them today. You must be wrecked from it all. Still haven't had your coffee.
No, that's James. Yeah, look, it's just about completely empty. There's still a little bit left.
Okay. I think I'm just looking back now through Test Huddle here, and I think you've addressed everything there, really. I think Alt has come in with an interesting question there at the end, and it's a total off-topic question, which asks, what is the coolest bug you have recently found? So.
Oh, geez. Tell you what, why don't you ask me about my favorite Beatle album? It's just it's not not an easy question to answer by any means. What was the coolest book that I read recently? Let me look over here. A book that really excites me. I've long been interested in The Black Swan. John Bach introduced me to that book in 2008. That's a book about how we think about risk. How we think about the impact of the highly improbable. That remains a huge favorite for me. A lot of people don't like Nassim Taleb's style. He's arrogant. He's very dismissive of his critics, and I like that. I mean, I like somebody with that level of confidence, because it's a perverse kind of confidence. He's confident that he doesn't know everything. He's confident that he can't know everything. And so in that sense, he's a little bit like Socrates, right? Socrates professed that he didn't know very much, and all the Greeks of the time said, well, he must be faking it. Come on, I mean, he's so smart. How can he be? How can he claim that he doesn't know stuff? Well, that is a real skill to maintain epistemic humility, to be careful, to understand the limitations of our knowledge. So that's a book that excited me quite a bit. I read an interesting book on society in the United States recently called The Divide, which will probably greatly offend many of the right-wingers out there, but the fact is there are two systems of justice in the U.S. That's a book by Matt Taibbi, and he talks about how there's one kind of justice for rich people and one kind of justice for poor people. And so someone of my political bent was galvanized by that. Let's see. Well, here, I'll just have a look at the problem that I've got there. What you're seeing, that is the corner of my library that is dedicated to testing and testing-related stuff, and I don't think you're even seeing all of it. My shoulder's in the way of some of it. There's so much stuff out there. I'm glancing over and I'm seeing Edward Tufte's books on visualizing data. That stuff is cool and beautiful. From a long time ago, Eric Evans's book, Domain-Driven Design. I'm now launching on the ones that have prominent and visible spines. Let's see. Well, there's another classic over there, Judgment Under Uncertainty, which is Kahneman and Tversky's collection of essays on heuristics and on biases. So the kind of books that engage me most are things that allow me to see things in a different way. Miriam asks a question. One question, we're not running out of time. When a tester says any code change requires a full regression, what would you like to say to such a notion? Well, frankly, I would say bullshit. First of all, let's be careful what we mean. We're saying any code change requires a full regression. What does regression mean? Regression means going backwards, backsliding. What that tester meant to say, probably, is any code change requires a full regression test.
Yeah, it mostly means that any code change means that we need to rerun all the regression test cases.
What would I say to a tester like that? I'd say, why don't you learn how to test? That's what I would say to a tester like that. Please learn how to test. Please learn that testing is about risk. Please learn that testing is about learning about the product. Please learn that any code change has risk associated with it, and if you understand something about that risk, you can greatly reduce the scope of testing that you believe you need to do. When a tester says any code change requires a full regression, I would simply ask the question, why do you believe that? What makes you think that? Any code change? Full regression? Does a code change require all the previous tests that have been run before to be run again? What about really important risks introduced by this change that are not covered by any regression checks so far? Please learn how to test. When you're going to make sweeping statements like that, it's an indication that you're not thinking about risk. You're not thinking about how you're going to manage your time. You might as well be a machine. You might as well be a machine. Okay, press the button. Rerun all the regression checks. Oh, all the regression checks are not encoded. I guess you're going to be spending an awful lot of time doing that. And in a world of real deadlines, of real business risk, of real business value, statements like that are, to my mind, unsupportable. I would even add silly.
Thank you. Just one comment on that. Don't you think the testers should develop better code understanding as well to analyze the risk when it comes to, if they're so particular about the code change and regression, so they could try to articulate what kind of regression they need to undergo if it's needed?
That could be really helpful, but I don't think that all testers need to do that. I think it'd be very helpful for some testers on your team to do that. If you're the only tester on the team, maybe you should consider learning how to do that. But you know what? We've also got programmers. Programmers can help us with that. Programmers that I love James's aphorism, James Fox aphorism, that if you know a programmer, it's like knowing a friend with a pickup truck. If you want to be a programmer, if you want to be a tester, you can either learn to program or you can learn to be charming and get help from programmers. If you have reason to believe that a programmer is making a change that is risky, one of the best things that you can do is to have another programmer help you understand the implications of the change if you don't understand those implications yourself. There's a number of different approaches to that problem, and yes, learning to code is a valuable one and a good one. As Gabby responds, let's start with having the programmer articulate the implications of the change. let's start with having the programmer describe what's going on there and how could it how could it affect the rest of the product.
Yeah.
So one of the things that gets my spidey senses tingling is if the programmer is having trouble doing that, or if the programmer is a little too blithe or a little too carefree with that, then I treat that as a possible indicator that maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. And the extent to which I know how to code helps with that. Mariam, you're suggesting an impact matrix. Well, okay, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but whatever model of the product, whatever models of the product that you can apply to that might be helpful, go ahead, sure. It looks like Marzio is busily typing away there. What you got for us? Are you working on this or on something else? And his microphone's up and he's muted, so I'm not going to get an answer from him real quick. Hello, hello. Maybe I'll go back to the other page there.
Yeah, I'll have a look over in Test Huddle now and see if there's anything else that's coming through there.
Mara had a nice post regarding testing and automation. That's true too. Alt. Thank you for that. I'll post that link in the Google Hangout chat window too. If you were to restart your testing career, what would you have changed? I don't know. I think that's an unanswerable question, really. I have no regrets. You know, it's a journey, and it's very easy to say in retrospect how nice it would be if I had known this and that, and if I had been aware of this and that, but I wasn't. So I don't concern myself very much with questions like that, Ajay. I would have had to have any bit. When I look back on my my life, I see chance encounters, I see accidental discoveries, I see serendipity, and I could change one bit. I could change a chance meeting on a street. I could change an earlier airplane flight, and who knows what would have happened. So it's not a question that I really know how to answer. I'm happy with where I've got and what I've done.
Well, I know, Michael, if you didn't have a career in testing, I'm sure you'd have a great career as a musician.
I'm not so sure about that at all.
we've seen you in action at some of the trad sessions here in Galway with the mandolin. Very entertaining.
Well, there's that. Maybe I would have if I restart my testing career, what would you have changed? I would have practiced mandolin more. Is there a specific area that you're really eager to study in regard to learning something new about testing or new to apply to testing? I'm trying very diffidently to improve my study of mathematics. Actually, there's another exciting book recently, a book called Measurement by a guy named Paul Lockhart, a book on math for fun, math as an art, math as entertainment, and it's interesting to see how much of his work and how much of the work of this fellow who wrote How Not to Be Wrong, whose name escapes me at the moment, how much geometry appears to pervade and influence and interact with other branches of math that I hadn't really been aware of to the degree that I had. And I rather enjoyed geometry in high school. I changed schools. In the middle of the year, we started to study geometry, and so maybe that's something I would have changed. Maybe I would have stayed in that school that year. But then I wouldn't have gone to England that year, and I wouldn't have learned so much about that part of the world. Ellenberg is the name of the guy who wrote How Not to Be Wrong. So I'm interested in that these days. But who knows what's next? Next, it might be visualization, and I recently downloaded a copy of QlikView, QlikView, and I've been musing on how to apply that to large data sets and use that for analysis.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Michael, for taking time out today, and I'm sorry to have to wrap up things here.
It's getting late in
Dublin. To have to do so.
Or in Galway, I guess.
Yes, here in Galway. And just wanted to thank you very much for taking time out for this Google Hangout. And thank you all of you here who've attended and asked so many questions. I've shared a number of links in the test huddle chat area in the comment section, and I'm sure there's plenty more. I'll get the links for you from Michael, links to various books and presentations, and we'll share those later. And if you want to find out more as well about Michael's presentations at Eurostar, you can find out on the website. And there's also links there in the chat or in the comment section. And that's all for today. Thank you again, Michael. And the Hangout is now finished.
Okay, thanks very much, Dara. Thank you for hosting this. Bye-bye, all you silent, mute, and somewhat visible people.
Bye-bye.
And keep in touch. You're absolutely welcome to contact me on Twitter or in Skype. I'm Michael.A.Bolton on Skype. And thank you all. Namaste.